Welcome to this explainer. Now, when I say the word Oceania, your mind probably jumps straight to a sandy postcard. You know, pristine beaches, crystal clear water, and absolute tranquility stretching across 3 million square miles of the Pacific. But we are going to look way beyond that today. Oceania is actually a complex, profoundly resource-rich arena that is quietly acting as a massive engine driving our global economy.
Okay, let's dive right into this explainer's roadmap. We'll be hitting 6 main stops today: defining the region, checking out its massive resource wealth, its major global economic ties, how the money actually moves, its vulnerabilities and challenges, and finally, the future geopolitical outlook. Let's get into it.
So Section 1, defining the Oceania region. Way beyond that postcard view. Oceania isn't just one place. It's a vast, incredibly fragmented expanse. The region breaks down into distinct subregions. You've got the massive continental landmass of Australia, Zealandia, and then these scattered Pacific archipelagos, Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. The sheer geographic spread here is honestly staggering. It encompasses thousands of islands scattered across a huge chunk of the Earth's surface, acting like a giant, crucial bridge between East and West.
But, that vast geography creates some pretty extreme economic contrasts. On one side of the coin, you have highly developed, robust market economies. Think Australia and New Zealand, right? Fully plugged into the global financial system. But on the flip side, we have much smaller, developing island nations. These spots are highly vulnerable. Take a country like Tuvalu, for instance. It relies intensely on international aid, fishing licenses, and specialized trust funds, basically just to keep its economy afloat amidst all that intense geographic isolation.
Moving on to Section 2, the region's resource wealth, the true drivers of trade.
Just look at the sheer concentration of critical minerals here. It's wild. Australia alone is an absolute global powerhouse. They are pumping out iron ore, coal, gold, and LNG, that's liquefied natural gas, at volumes that literally dictate global commodity prices. And then there's New Caledonia. This tiny territory holds roughly a tenth of the entire world's nickel reserves. No way, right? Papua New Guinea is also deeply in the mix with large-scale gold, copper, and oil extraction. So why does this actually matter to you? Well, because that Australian iron is forging the steel for rapidly growing cities halfway across the world. And that New Caledonian nickel? It's absolutely crucial for the high-capacity batteries sitting inside the electric vehicles driving around your neighborhood right now.
But it isn't all just heavy industry. Oceania literally feeds the world. Above the surface, Australia and New Zealand totally dominate global beef, wool, and dairy markets. Meanwhile, the tropical Pacific Islands are churning out vital cash crops: sugar, coffee, cocoa, palm oil, which really form the backbone of their local export economies. And we absolutely cannot ignore the blue economy. The ocean itself is a massive economic engine. We're talking incredibly lucrative deep-sea fishing rights, especially for tuna, while simultaneously opening up the highly controversial new frontier of potential seedbed mining. Seriously, every time you walk through a grocery store or charge up a device, you're likely interacting directly with the output of Oceania.
All right, Section 3, major global economic ties. Basically, who wants what they have?
The most seismic shift over the last few decades has been the region's total economic pivot toward Asia. China has definitively emerged as the primary partner here. Their historically unprecedented urbanization completely relies on a constant, non-stop influx of Australian iron ore and metallurgical coal just to build out that sprawling infrastructure. On top of that, the big high-tech manufacturing hubs of Asia, places like Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, are the major critical destinations for Oceania's massive LNG shipments. It's not an exaggeration to say this specific geographic region fuels the industrial heart of Asia's ongoing growth.
But, it's not exclusively an Asian story. A really complex web of traditional and emerging ties is still highly active. For instance, the region maintains robust Commonwealth connections, fostering significant ongoing trade links with the UK and Europe. The United States also maintains major comprehensive trade agreements and deep military economic security partnerships across the Pacific. And if we look at the local level, there's the Pay Surplus Agreement. This is a vital intra-regional framework specifically designed to foster streamlined trade between the larger continental neighbors and the smaller developing island nations.
Let's zoom in a bit for Section 4, mechanisms of economic exchange, how the money actually moves. So the money primarily moves through inbound capital, and it happens in a couple of huge ways. First up, massive foreign direct investment. Multinational corporations from North America and Asia are pouring billions of dollars into building out the massive local infrastructure, deepwater ports, rail lines, refineries, all the stuff needed to extract those resources we were just talking about. Second, there's tourism. For a lot of these island nations, it's actually super helpful to think of tourism fundamentally as an export. Places like Fiji, Bora Bora, and New Zealand are literally exporting their pristine natural beauty as a highly lucrative, high-margin service to travelers flying down from the Northern Hemisphere.
Now, let's move to the local level and see how this builds into a really fascinating human cycle of trade. A huge, deeply ingrained mechanism of exchange here is labor mobility, which generally operates in 3 distinct steps. Step 1. Seasonal workers travel from the smaller Pacific Islands, often leaving their families behind for months at a time. Step 2. They provide essential, really hard-to-source agricultural labor on those massive, sprawling farms in Australia and New Zealand. And then Step 3, they earn relatively high wages and send critical economic remittances back home. This specific labor cycle isn't just supplementary. It's a vital, load-bearing lifeline for a lot of these developing island economies.
Which brings us to Section 5, Vulnerabilities and Challenges. What actually threatens them?
Because after looking at all this incredible wealth and interconnected trade, we really have to stop and ask, what actually threatens this vital network? The systems we've outlined are incredibly lucrative for sure, but they're also uniquely fragile. Let's look at the immense systemic barriers to this system's ongoing survival.
The first massive vulnerability is a classic geographic trap known as distance decay. Because Oceania is so deeply isolated from primary global markets, sheer distance places a constant, heavy financial burden on export viability. It's a simple rule. The further a product has to travel, the more expensive and less competitive it becomes. For these island nations, overcoming literally thousands of miles of open ocean to reach a major port means their profit margins are perpetually squeezed by baseline transportation and logistics costs alone.
They also face the ever-present danger of the resource curse. This happens when these small nations put all their economic eggs in one commodity basket. They risk total economic collapse if global demand shifts. It's the immense economic risk a nation takes when a single export artificially inflates their currency or completely crowds out other developing sectors. Think about it. If you rely entirely on copper or timber or tourism, a sudden drop in global pricing or a global halt in international travel can gut your entire national budget practically overnight.
And this brilliantly illustrates the real-world danger of that trap. Take the small island nation of Nauru. They heavily mined and exported phosphate, and for a brief period in the 20th century, they enjoyed incredible, rapid, world-leading wealth. But when those phosphate deposits inevitably ran out, the national economy absolutely plummeted. It left the physical landscape ecologically devastated and the financial future of the island deeply uncertain. Nauru's history stands as a stark, undeniable warning to the rest of the region about the fatal limits of single-resource extraction.
And beyond pure economics, there's an existential, physical threat right on their doorstep: climate change. For these highly vulnerable island nations, many of which sit just a few feet above sea level, rising waters don't just threaten their coastal views. Rising tides threaten to literally consume the very land masses and vital freshwater aquifers they absolutely rely on for agriculture, local trade, and outright physical survival. It is an immediate, encroaching reality that complicates every single long-term economic forecast for the entire region.
Finally, Section 6, the future geopolitical outlook, a macro balancing act.
So the crucial point here is how the region adapts to the future. Australia, for example, has massive potential to shift from the old economy to the new green transition. They're looking at pivoting from being a historical giant in metallurgical coal exports to becoming a global leader in green hydrogen power generation. And alongside their traditional oil and gas extraction, they are perfectly positioned to dominate the mining and export of lithium. That's a rare earth element desperately needed worldwide to power the batteries of the ongoing electric vehicle revolution.
But as they aggressively make this massive economic transition, the nations of Oceania face a really delicate, high-stakes geopolitical balancing act. Impartially speaking, look at the board. On one hand, their sheer economic prosperity and export volume are inextricably reliant on continuing massive trade flows with China. On the other hand, their regional defense, intelligence sharing, and historical security architectures are deeply tied to traditional Western alliances, primarily the US and the UK. Navigating successfully between these two massive, often competing global spheres of influence is arguably the defining strategic challenge of the region for the next century.
Which leaves us with this crucial question to close out our explainer today. As the world rapidly transitions to green energy, will Oceania's vast, untapped resources bring unprecedented prosperity and influence to the region? Or will the immense, competing demands of global superpowers make their own strategic autonomy completely impossible? It's a fascinating, incredibly high-stakes geographic balancing act, and the whole world is going to be watching what happens next. Thanks so much for joining me to explore it.